there, come clean my shoes. They're worth more than your monthly paycheck.
Yeah.
I clean floors and windows, Mr. Hartwell.
Not you. I am not your servant, and I am not your slave.
How dare you talk to me like that? You're fired. Security, get her out of my building.
Before you do that, you should
Know something. You've spent years not seeing me. 12 years of scrubbing your toilets and investing every spare dollar. I now own 7% of Westfield Industries. I am your third largest shareholder.
You? A janitor? 7%?
A CEO thought he could humiliate a janitor in front of his entire board, but what happened next would cost him everything he'd ever built. This is a story about power, dignity, and the moment one woman's courage changed an entire corporation forever. What you're about to hear will make you question everything you think you know about success, power, and who really holds the cards in the corporate world. It was 8 a.m. on a rainy Tuesday morning when Margaret Williams pushed her cleaning cart into the marble-floored boardroom of Westfield Industries. At 58 years old, she'd been cleaning these offices for 12 years, moving through the building like a ghost, invisible to the executives who passed her every single day without so much as a glance or a good morning. But today was different. Today would change everything. CEO Richard Hartwell was preparing for the biggest presentation of his career, a merger with a European conglomerate that would make him millions, maybe even billions. His corner office overlooked the city skyline. His suits cost more than most people's monthly rent, and his reputation as a ruthless businessman had been featured in Forbes 3 times. He was untouchable, or so he thought. His Italian leather shoes, custom-made, worth $3,000, had gotten muddy in the parking lot during his rushed entrance. He was already irritated that morning, having argued with his wife about his latest affair, and now this. Mud on his precious shoes. In front of the board. Unacceptable. You there, he barked, his voice cutting through the polite pre-meeting chatter like a whip. He pointed directly at Margaret, who was quietly emptying a trash bin near the corner. Get over here and clean these. Now. The boardroom fell deathly silent. Coffee cups paused midway to lips. Conversations died mid-sentence. 15 executives, men and women in their expensive suits, clutching their leather portfolios, watched in frozen disbelief as this powerful man extended his foot toward an elderly black woman, treating her like she was nothing more than a doormat, a tool, an object to be used and discarded. Some board members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. A few looked away, unable to witness the degradation. But no one spoke up. No one defended her. Fear of Richard Hartwell's temper kept them all silent. Margaret looked at his muddy shoe, then slowly raised her eyes to meet his face. Every person in that room held their breath, the tension so thick you could cut it with a knife. Would she kneel? Would she walk away in shame? Would she cause a scene and lose her job? Would she simply accept this humiliation like so many others before her had accepted his abuse? What she did next, nobody in that boardroom could have possibly seen coming. Not in their wildest imagination. Margaret calmly set down her cleaning supplies with deliberate, measured movements. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her smartphone. Not the latest model, but functional and equipped with everything she needed. With steady hands that showed not even a tremor of nervousness, she began recording video. The phone's camera pointed directly at Richard Hartwell's arrogant face. Mr. Hartwell, she said clearly, her voice cutting through the tension like a sharp blade through silk. I clean floors. I clean windows. I maintain the dignity and appearance of this building with pride. But I am not, and will never be, anyone's personal servant. I am not your slave. I am not beneath you. Hartwell's face turned from pale to crimson in seconds, veins bulging at his temples. How dare you speak to me that way? You're fired. Security. Get this woman out of my building immediately. He reached for the phone on the conference table, ready to have her physically removed, probably arrested for trespassing. The board members exchanged nervous glances. Some relieved the uncomfortable moment would soon end, others quietly ashamed of their own cowardice. But Margaret wasn't done. Not even close. Before you do that, sir, you should know something important. She reached into her uniform pocket, that plain gray uniform with the Westfield Industries logo embroidered on the chest, and pulled out a worn leather folder that had clearly seen years of careful use. My name is Margaret Williams. 12 years ago, when I first started cleaning these very floors, wiping down these very windows, I began investing my savings. Small amounts at first. $20 here, $50 there. Money I earned scrubbing toilets and emptying your trash bins. She placed a legal document on the polished mahogany boardroom table with a solid thump that echoed in the silent room. I studied this company. I learned everything about it. I watched stock patterns. I read every public filing. I made smart choices, patient choices, consistent choices over more than a decade. And now, I own 7% of Westfield Industries stock. That makes me your third largest shareholder, Mr. Hartwell. The room absolutely erupted. Executives jumped from their seats, grabbing the document with shaking hands. passing it around in utter disbelief. Legal counsel put on their reading glasses, examining every line, every signature, every seal. The numbers were real. The signatures were authentic. The notarizations were legitimate. This wasn't a joke. This wasn't a mistake. The janitor was a major shareholder. Margaret continued, and now her voice carried not just steadiness, but power. The kind of power that comes from truth, from preparation, from years of patient planning. I've watched this company for over a decade. Not from luxurious boardrooms and exclusive golf courses. Not from five-star restaurants and corporate retreats. I've watched from break rooms where employees cry during lunch. From empty hallways at midnight when executives think no one else is around. From supply closets where I've overheard conversations you thought were private. She pulled out another folder from her cart. This one much thicker, bulging with papers, photographs, and USB drives. I've seen the harassment complaints swept under rugs that I personally mopped clean. I've found the financial documents carelessly thrown in trash cans that I've emptied at 3 a.m. I've listened to the tears of employees too afraid to speak up, too terrified of losing their jobs to report what they've witnessed. I've been the invisible witness to 12 years of corruption, abuse, and corporate crime. One by one, with the precision of a prosecutor presenting evidence in a courtroom, she laid photographs and documents on that polished boardroom table. Bank statements showing offshore accounts. Emails discussing illegal accounting practices. Photographs of safety violations at manufacturing plants that put workers' lives at risk daily. Settlement agreements for sexual harassment cases paid with company funds, while rank-and-file workers were denied cost-of-living raises. I didn't just invest in this company, Mr. Hartwell. I investigated it. Every late night, every early morning, every moment you thought the janitor wasn't paying attention, I was documenting. I was photographing. I was building a case brick by brick, page by page, year after year. The board members' faces shifted rapidly from shock to horror to panic as they recognized their own signatures on damaging documents they thought had been shredded and destroyed years ago. Somewhat pale. Others looked like they might be sick. The company's legal counsel was already on his phone, undoubtedly calling for emergency crisis management. I contacted the SEC 3 weeks ago, Margaret continued, her voice never wavering. I contacted the Department of Labor. I contacted investigative journalists at 3 major newspapers. They all have copies of everything you're seeing here. The only reason this hasn't gone public yet is because I wanted to give the board one chance, just one, to do the right thing before I burned this whole corrupt system to the ground. What happened next moved faster than anyone in that room could possibly process, like dominoes falling in rapid succession, each one triggering the next in an unstoppable cascade of consequences. The board's legal counsel immediately called for an executive session, excluding Hartwell from the room despite his screaming protests. Margaret was invited to stay, not as a janitor, but as a major shareholder with every legal right to be present. The emergency vote was called within 30 minutes. Hartwell tried desperately to maintain control, calling in favors, making threats, promising deals, but Margaret had done something absolutely brilliant, something that showed the true depth of her strategic genius. She'd already contacted the other major shareholders weeks before this meeting. The pension fund managers, the institutional investors, the family trusts that held large blocks of stock. She'd met with them personally, dressed not in her janitor's uniform, but in a simple, dignified business suit. She'd presented her evidence methodically, professionally, irrefutably. They'd seen the documents. They'd heard the stories from other employees she'd quietly interviewed over months. They'd reviewed the financial analysis showing how Hartwell's corruption was actually costing the company money and exposing it to massive legal liability. The vote wasn't even close. Hartwell was removed as CEO by a margin of 87% to 13%. Within 2 hours, he was escorted from the building by the same security guards he'd called to remove Margaret. Within 2 days, the SEC launched a formal investigation, agents arriving with boxes to seize documents and hard drives. Within 2 weeks, federal prosecutors filed criminal charges including fraud, embezzlement, and obstruction of justice. Hartwell faced up to 20 years in prison. But Margaret's story didn't end with simple revenge. That's not what this was ever about. The board, desperate to salvage the company's reputation and avoid complete collapse, offered her Hartwell's position. A janitor becoming CEO, it would have been the ultimate Cinderella story, the kind of thing movies are made of. Magazine covers, book deals, speaking tours. She could have had it all. But Margaret declined without hesitation. I don't want his job, she told them firmly, looking each board member directly in the eye. I don't want his office, his salary, or his power. What I want is much simpler and much more important. I want you to do yours. I want you to actually govern this company with integrity. Instead, she negotiated something far more meaningful. Margaret accepted a permanent position on the board of directors with full voting rights and a seat on every major committee. She used her 7% ownership stake strategically, building coalitions with other shareholders who actually cared about ethical business practices, not just quarterly profits. Her first actions sent shockwaves through the entire corporate world. She voted for and successfully implemented transparent accounting systems with independent oversight that couldn't be manipulated. She created worker representation on the board. Actual employees from the factory floor, the customer service department, the maintenance staff, people who understood what happened in the real company, not just the executive suite fantasy. She established whistleblower protections with real teeth, including guaranteed legal defense funds and anti-retaliation measures that were enforceable in court. She championed equal treatment policies regardless of job title, with dignity and respect training mandatory for everyone from the mailroom to the C-suite. The employees who'd been invisible for so long, the janitors, the security guards, the cafeteria workers, the warehouse staff, the people who actually made the company function every single day, finally had a voice that couldn't be ignored, dismissed, or silenced. The transformation wasn't easy. Some executives resigned rather than adapt to the new culture. Some shareholders complained about short-term costs. But something remarkable happened over the following 2 years. Productivity increased, employee turnover dropped by 67%, customer satisfaction ratings soared, and profitability actually improved because people who felt valued worked harder, cared more, and built better products. Today, Westfield Industries is stronger than it's ever been in its 70-year history, not because of ruthless leadership or cutting corners or exploiting workers, but because someone had the courage to stand up when it mattered most, when staying silent would have been easier, when speaking up could have cost her everything. Margaret still comes to the company headquarters several days a week, but now she arrives through the front door, not the service entrance. She's in the boardroom by invitation and right, not to push a cleaning cart, but to help steer a multi-billion-dollar corporation toward a better future. She's become an international symbol of something powerful and important. Dignity cannot be bought, sold, or wiped off someone's expensive shoe. The marble floors still shine beautifully, reflecting the afternoon light that streams through floor-to-ceiling windows. But now, the people who clean them, who maintain them, who take pride in their work are treated with the respect they deserved all along. The respect that should have been given freely but had to be fought for with courage, intelligence, and unwavering determination. This incredible story proves that power isn't about your job title, the size of your office, or how expensive your shoes are. It's about your character, your courage, and your willingness to stand up for what's right even when you're standing alone. Margaret Williams taught a CEO and an entire corporation that every single person deserves dignity, no matter what job they do, what uniform they wear, or how much money they make. If this story inspired you, moved you, or made you think differently about power and respect, smash that like button right now and subscribe for more incredible true stories of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Hit that notification bell so you never miss another inspiring story. Share this video with someone who needs to remember their worth today, because everyone has more power than they realize, and sometimes we all need that reminder. Now here's my question for you, and I really want to hear your thoughts on this. If you were in Margaret's position, would you have accepted the CEO role and all that power, or would you have made the same choice she did to serve on the board instead? What would you do with that kind of opportunity? Drop your answer in the comments below. I read every single one, and I genuinely want to know what you think. Remember this always. Respect is earned by how you treat people when you think nobody's watching. The janitor, the cashier, the server, the security guard, they're all watching, they're all listening, and they all matter. Treat everyone with dignity, because you never know who might be quietly building the power to change everything. See you in the next story, and remember, your worth isn't determined by others. It's determined by how you value